Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Stanisci, and welcome to CFL Talk on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. And don't forget, while you download the app, be sure to leave a comment, rate it, and leave a comment. Anyway, I'm still freaking out over what happened this weekend, and I'm sitting here with. I just want to make this clear, folks. Okay, I don't want anybody to misunderstand this. I'm sitting here with two Dallas fans, so I'm in a tough spot here.
We're not just
I
Dallas
don't
fans. We are
know about the
suffering
morning
Dallas
as far
fans.
as
Right?
we've had more than a day, gentlemen, to work past it. Maybe we should get to we'll get to CFL stuff again. We'll save the best for last. We'll do the CFL at the end. So Dallas loses a game that everybody thought they'd win, and some of their fans were ready for a trouncing. Actually, the opposite happened. I'll start with you, Dave, since you have seniority on this show. Start off the conversation about what happened to Dallas.
What happened is that was a team that was not prepared for the game on all facets of the football,
Mike's
coaching.
Off,
oh, am I on? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Eduardo?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that was
here. Is it?
That was a team that wasn't ready to play. The coaching staff wasn't ready for what was thrown at them. The defense wasn't ready. The offense wasn't ready. I think what it was, and you might have been right a little bit here, Frank, in that they looked at an opponent that, didn't have a good record, but it was an opponent that was getting confidence at the right time. I think Dallas maybe they didn't take it seriously enough because they didn't take note of the problems that they were having during the regular season, winning on the road, beating good teams. Like I think they were kidding themselves in thinking that they were going to be able to walk through that matchup against the Packers without any problems.
Eduardo?
I mean, it was a real awakening for a Dallas team that thought they owned the league this season. I think that, and where the issue to me was, yes, there were defensive issues. I have to accept that, but the issue was that there was no offense. The strategy wasn't there for this team. Dak Prescott thought that over the air was going to be a solution to beating the Packers. No, you have to use what has worked the whole season, and the whole season what has worked is the ground game. And if you are not going to execute, you are going to get hurt. And that's what happened to Dallas. And it's sad that it happened at home. I think it would have been an easier blow to the team if it was on the road. But to do it at home in front of their fans, it was sad. It was really, really, really sad. Everything was there for Dallas to perform and give their fans something that they've been waiting for a long, long, long time.
Well, they're waiting a little longer, and my review of the game is, Dak Prescott made a mistake or two, but the Dallas defense played much better all year. This game here, this year they did it again. They just didn't play good football, and not just the defense. The offense didn't come through, but it was something that it's mystifying. I posted something as a joke. It was a Dallas Cowboy. I think it was Dak Prescott with a maple leaf emblem on the side of his helmet. Because to me, I think there's a definite affinity. I mean, the Leafs and the Dallas Cowboys have the same problem. For some reason, they have some really good players. They have a really good season, And then something happens in the playoffs where it's like they forget how to play. And I don't know if that's coaching. That'd be the easiest answer for that kind of, it was a consistently poorly played game throughout the three phases, of the team, which does speak a little bit. Well, to me, it speaks of coaching, because to play that poorly, and to Eduardo's words, where there was an inappropriate game plan, well, a game plan that didn't work, you'd expect a little more. I really think that Jones is going to look for a new head coach. He's got some heavy thinking to do. This is a guy who has, with the stadium, with the team, everything he's done has been top drawer. Just the only problem with the Dallas Cowboys is the finish is not top drawer.
Well, I think what it is here, and like the Leafs and the Cowboys definitely have a lot of parallels in that regard, in where they're viewed as the top team in terms of, how much money they bring in, the popularity, and things like that. I wonder too how much of that gets to the players' heads a little bit there, right? They build up this persona that they're playing for the Dallas Cowboys, so then there's a I wouldn't say a cockiness, but there's a
Absolutely.
mindset to it. And like people kept saying, "Oh, are you excited about Dallas this year?" And I'm like, I can't get excited about a team that hasn't reached a championship game, let alone, I mean, they've won playoff games. That's no longer the issue with this team. It's getting toward, within the grasp of the Super Bowl. They haven't even gone to that point yet. And they were talking about this team being a Super Bowl contender. Like, let's talk about this team becoming a contender within its own conference before you go out and say this is a Super Bowl contender. And I think the players, I think they bought in too much into the hype of their own hype. They should have been all about, we haven't done anything, we haven't proven anything yet. I think they got a little bit of that, and it was a wake up call. I even think the coaching staff got a little too wrapped up into it as well, because they when they got the NFC East crown, which many thought wasn't going to be possible with the way that the Eagles started their season. Things went their way against the Lions for them to do it, and then it just felt like everything was cruise control for this team, and that to me was the issue.
Yeah, they I don't know, Eduardo, you want to piggyback on that call?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an aura with the Dallas Cowboys, as in the, it has been, I would say, what, a decade now. That
Try 50 years. It's been 50 years
well, no, no,
since
no,
the
no. But what I'm saying is a playoff, a, a bad playoff run has been for a decade now, that they just don't perform at a respectable level. I am not saying supernatural, respectable. Uh, they get close to where they are supposed to be, to the comfort, to the NFC Championship. That's where I want to go. I don't want to go beyond that, and then we can think of the Super Bowl. But they get close to the NFC Championship, and it's like they demoralize.
How many Super Bowls have they won?
They're among the top teams in the league in terms of Super Bowl wins, but again, that's in the past. For
Long past.
I haven't seen this team contend for a Super Bowl in my lifetime.
Well, you're only 19, so don't expect too much. Just trying to be nice.
But that's the thing, right? Like, we're getting on to what, we're going on 30 years. Yeah, I was born in 94. I'm going to be 30 this year, and I have not seen this team come close to winning a championship. Now, there have been Cowboys teams, I believe, had the makeup of a championship, and things hadn't gone their way. I look back to the thing that bothers me about the Cowboys. It's not that they lose because they weren't the better team. It's how they lose. So they get blown out, and get blown out by the Packers at home. They lose that one game to the Packers because of the Dez Bryant catch that should have been a catch but wasn't a catch because of NFL rules. I think of the Tony Romo fumbling the field goal, the snap on the for the field goal that would have likely have clinched the playoff win for them there. Like it's the way they lose. They do it in the way that everybody can just everyone like makes it seem as if it's their like that's their Super Bowl. Seeing the Dallas Cowboys trip over themselves. That's what bothers me more than them losing is how they lose.
Toronto Maple Leafs.
Exactly.
Same exact thing. And I think you're right about the fact that, being put on such a high pedestal is a hard thing to to negotiate past. I'll say past or around, because it's the elephant in the room with the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Dallas Cowboys. You've got they're whether they are or whether they aren't, we can argue about it. You've got the Leafs who are looked at as kind of Canada's team. There's no team in Canada that gets the kind of reception they do at the other Canadian arenas. There is no team that gets that kind of reception. So it's a pretty fair statement to make. The same is true for the Dallas Cowboys. Wherever the Dallas Cowboys go, fanfare and excitement follows because they're the Dallas Cowboys. It's just they're so held up in high esteem that I think it's hard to imagine what it's like to be on a team that is supposed to do that. It's not even about my greatness that I'm going to win this championship or we're going to win this championship. We're supposed to win it because we're the Dallas Cowboys. We're the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're the best treated team. The Leafs have people that organize their stereo system in their home. I mean, give me a break. And I'm sure the Dallas Cowboys have comparable things where the players are treated so well, right? And so basically, the final thing I'm going to say is, and maybe it means you try too hard. Maybe you care so much, and it's not about not caring. It's not about Dak Prescott or anybody else on that team or in that organization. And all one has to do is look up at Jones in the booth, and you'll get an idea of disappointment, the pain and suffering. And the worst thing of all that Leafs and Cowboy fans, it's when the organization doesn't know what he looked like. He got hit by a train, has no idea. He had no answer. He just was, oh, what the heck just happened? And that's what makes it a problem, is that to resolve that.
The problem, Frank, and I'll tell you what's the problem. And I always say it of the Leafs, and I always say it of Dallas. Until the fans stop showing up to the stands, until the fans stop showing up to the stands, that team both those teams will never win a major championship. Because
I hope you're wrong. I hope you're wrong, because when it comes to Toronto and Dallas fans, you'll have a hard time keeping them out of the stadium or arena.
yeah, but it has to happen. If not, it's not going to happen.
I get
Look,
that. I get that.
The only chance that the Leafs had, and I hate to say this to the Leafs, but the only chance when they had a good chance of making it somewhere was when we were in the pandemic, because there weren't fans on the stands. They actually played they actually played well as a team consistently.
Here's the one for me. The thing, what makes the Leafs and the Cowboys different, in my opinion, is you got an owner in Jerry Jones who is a senior, right? He's in his 80s. He's not getting younger. And
Right.
so he doesn't have all the time in the world to enjoy this money that he's making for his family will, but he wants to win a championship. He's been having this desire, this conquest to win a title post Jimmy Johnson, to say that I can do it, right? I can build a contender in Dallas. So for me, with Dallas, the only reason why I feel I have hope is they've done some good things. Jerry Jones, yeah, does he trip over himself with some of the decisions he makes? Absolutely. But what gives me a different pause between the Leafs and the Cowboys is that Jerry Jones doesn't have forever to wait for a champion, he's won a championship, but he wants to win another. He's not getting any younger. He wants to do it. The Leafs are run by a board that, it's a lot of it is about money, right? And making sure that you have the star power to keep, the revenues up and things like that. I get that. But I do think that when it comes to the Cowboys, Jerry Jones' desire to win a championship while he is still here, I think it will give me a little bit more belief that they could do it. But for me, it's like they got to get out of their own way.
Well, what they need, David, very simply is they need to play well in the playoffs, and there's a couple of reasons teams have a good, because we're talking about results here. We're not even talking about playing well. We saw some teams this weekend that lost and played well, but they lost, right? And we see it every day in every sport where you have teams, especially in championships. It's about doing enough to win. So that's what Dallas lacks. So how do you achieve that? Well, there's a couple of ways, right? Two obvious ways: great coaching and game changers. Do the Dallas Cowboys have a game changer? Do they have game changers? Is Dak Prescott a game changer? Is he the guy that can do what we saw with the Bills and their quarterback yesterday, who ran for 52 yards for a touchdown? That's a game-breaking play. That's what Dallas needs, and they can be game-breaking all season. I'm not talking about the season. I want to be specific here. They need game-breaking players in the playoffs. And is it an emotional thing they have to work out, or is it the players they don't have? Is it the coaching that doesn't coach well in the playoffs? Don't know. That's what Jerry Jones has to figure out. And we already saw him not know what to do the way that game ended.
I had more belief in Dak Prescott when he had first joined the Cowboys. I think he's gotten worse. It also doesn't help that, the thing with Dak Prescott is he got off to such a poor start. I think when you're down like they were, the margin for error is so low. He's trying to force things that he shouldn't be doing, and it costs them. And to me, that right there speaks to, you know what? Like, he wants to be of the Patrick Mahomes. Like, he wants to be on that level. But sometimes you just got to play with what you got in front of you and make it work, right? Like him and CeeDee Lamb, they were the best quarterback receiver duel to end the season. Like in those final weeks, no one could stop them. Then all of a sudden, they were clearly having issues. And so, to me, I think the big one here for Dak Prescott, I mean, the Cowboys are married to Dak Prescott right now. They can't just get rid of Dak Prescott. What bothers me is, they had opportunities when Dak Prescott wasn't making money to go out and be a good team that could go out and win. And they didn't take advantage of that. And so now they got some very tough decisions to make. Obviously, the big one being the coach. Plus, they also got to figure out a way to also be, a contending team and put together a contending team. And it gets tougher when you look at, guys that are being paid, guys that will need to be paid. You're looking at Micah Parsons. You're looking at CeeDee Lamb. Like, you got to make some tough decision.
I guess the question then is, what it becomes is, we saw what Detroit did. They traded their starting quarterback, played against him this weekend, and beat him with a young quarterback they traded for. Is it possible there might be a quarterback like that out there somewhere that, the Cowboys could trade Dak Prescott for? Because it's the contract and it's his age and all that stuff. It worked for Detroit. Now, the story that I'm telling about Detroit will sound a lot better in a couple of weeks if they're in the Super Bowl, right? So this point I'm making doesn't shine very bright at this point, other than to say they won the playoff game that they were asked to play, and Dallas didn't. So you can change quarterbacks. We're beginning to see that quarterbacks, once they reach a certain level of talent, there's a lot of them up there. I mean, we every so often, you notice how there's a quarterback, Josh Allen, for example. The quarterback he was at the beginning of this year, you wouldn't have considered him in the playoffs. Never mind, starting and doing what he did yesterday in that game in helping his team win, especially by not making mistakes. Goff did the same thing for Detroit. Dak Prescott did not. And, it's getting to the point where they need a change, something, especially if a new head coach comes in, David. I see that head coach putting his stamp on the team, and he's going to have to do it in a way that sends a clear message quickly, because this is a team that doesn't have a long time to win a championship. They're not very young.
No, they do have some younger players, but again, it's a team. When you look at the NFC right now, there's opportunities to go out. Now you got Detroit coming up. Now you got the Packers coming up. Now you got, obviously, the 49ers are going to be there. But there's opportunity for Dallas right now to really push forward for a championship. The problem is, they've squandered so many opportunities. You wonder if there's anything left in terms of,
And does losing get in the way?
Yeah. But I do and I'm not usually one to just automatically say fire the coach. But what is different this year and was different when Jerry Jones didn't want to fire Jason Garrett for the longest time, but he fired him because Mike McCarthy was available.
Right.
Now you've got a couple of options available that
Bill Belichick's available.
Bill Belichick. Look, people ask me, would I want Bill Belichick? And I said, it really depends on if Bill feels like he can do what he learned, if he could learn from he did wrong in New England post Tom Brady, because that was a disaster. To me, the way he handled that was totally wrong. I think he wants to go to a team that has pieces to win, and he's the guy that's going to get them there. Personally, that's why I think a lot of people are pointing to Dallas as that team. They got the pieces.
He could wear the white hat and ride in on his horse and save the day.
Yeah. But the other thing too with Belichick is, he's got options. Dallas may feel like they could get him, but Bill might decide, you know what? I like Atlanta. We know Atlanta really likes him. Atlanta's looking for that coach to really change the culture. But yeah, if I'm Jerry Jones, look, you can't just hit your wagon on Mike McCarthy maybe learning from this, because yes, Mike McCarthy did win a championship. He's also had a lot of issues in the playoffs, right? You got to look at someone who's got a track record and knows how to build the culture to win in the playoffs. And personally, what I saw from the Dallas Cowboys in the Mike McCarthy era, that's not a guy who I think can get this team to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and when Tampa won the Super Bowl with Brady, it wasn't that Brady was the key to it. Brady recognized there was a good team there that he could work with. Yes. And it was an organization that was making a move for Brady because they are ready for a quarterback of Brady's caliber over the short term. And this is what I think, to your point about Jerry Jones, his age, wanting to win a championship again, while he's around. He's really interested in making that happen. And, I don't think there's a better option for him than Belichick. I think also, in fairness to the situation, we've seen a lot of really great coaches move on to another team, and somehow it seems like they left their good coaching with the other team. We've seen that a few times too, right? So it's going to be a tough call for Jones, and I think it's going to take him a while to get over what happened in that game, just by the look and then analyze how they lost, because before they decide what they're going to do, they got to figure out what they've got that they need to change on the team, right? And so make their moves according to that, not just change stuff and then throw the change into the team. It's got to be they've got to be smart about what they do here. And you're right about Belichick. He doesn't have a very good reputation. Once Brady went and a couple of their receivers retired and a lot of their players retired, he was unable to replace those players that left to create the kind of, tough team that he had all those years with Brady.
And look, when you lose a Tom Brady, it's really tough to expect to not expect a drop off. But Belichick, to his demise, didn't make the right moves afterwards, though. Maybe he saw the writing on the wall was with Brady and wanted to keep Garoppolo, but it sounded like the owner wanted to keep Brady around, so Garoppolo had to go. Um, they maybe, I don't know who decided that Mac Jones was going to be the guy that they wanted to pick. Taking a kicker in the 4th round was something that he got a lot of attention for. So, like, to me, that's what worries me about Bill Belichick for the Cowboys, even just for a lot of teams, is can he learn from what went wrong and not have that ego to think that he's the all savior and everyone has to kind of worship at what he wants to do.
Yeah, and I think a definitive thing, a thing that there's a parallel here. The player that made the most difference in New England wasn't a player that anybody that they picked thinking he was going to be a leader on that team. We don't need to remind everybody where Brady was drafted, and you have to make decisions around the draft table that help the team get better. We've seen that. We've seen it in Detroit. We've seen it stay in San Francisco, and San Francisco is not afraid to let go of people and keep getting newer and younger, right? Without losing a beat when it comes to playing really good football. I mean, they're the team that could have won the Super Bowl last year if it wasn't for the NFL not letting them have 3 quarterbacks on the sideline.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so many things that you think about in those situations. So yeah, I mean, with the Cowboys, it's never a dull moment. I always tell people, being a Cowboys fan, you have to have the mental capability to follow this team because it tests you.
Okay, let's talk about the Buffalo game because my neighbors and my friends and NFL fans that I know are looking forward to the Bills and Steelers next week. The Bills, the team that might not have made the playoffs and went from probably not making the playoffs to finishing first or not making the playoffs to being now in the second round. They have seeding that benefits them with home field advantage. The last 6-7 weeks has been a real interesting situation with the Buffalo Bills on many fronts.
Yeah, I mean, I was concerned for them because they didn't look like a team that was starting to get mentally exhausted with everything going on. We know the issue with the coach and some of the things he was saying, and then you also had Josh Allen was not playing very well. They had to fire their offensive coordinator, but when you look at how they played against the Steelers, granted the second half could have gone a little better. I think they got guilty of being too confident in that second half. But what I did see and what was, I think, a bonus if you're a Bills fan is you saw a confident Josh Allen, one that wasn't looking to make the hero play. He was looking to make the right play. Now, in the second half, I thought he could have been better, but I also think that he's learning. He is learning, and he's making the plays that are right for the team and not for himself. And so
And
that to me is a big
played
one.
he played better than the defense that was up against him.
Mm-hmm.
He made some really nice throws. He caught some really tight windows. He made some passes that were awesome. And if I look back at 7 weeks ago when I was watching the Bills play, when they're in the rut, and we saw, I didn't see much of a difference with Josh Allen in this game that we just saw on the weekend, and that game that they lost where things started to turn around and started to get ugly. The receivers didn't drop balls like they did in that game. And, I think that's been the biggest difference. I think it's the receiving core of the Buffalo Bills had unearned respect. It's not that they didn't have people's respect. They basically told people, we're not that good. We're dropping balls here and over again. How many drop balls in a game can a team afford, David?
I mean, you can't. You in a playoff game, every single mistake gets magnified, and so drops are killer. And I look even back to that Eagles Bucks game. That game should have been a blowout for the like. It was technically a blowout for the Bucks. Eagles should have had no chance in that game based on the plays that the Bucks didn't make.
Yep.
And so to me,
They didn't play in that game.
yeah. So to me, it's like, I look at what the Bills have done the last few weeks. They just seem to be more in sync on all levels, doing what needs to be done to win playoff games. Doesn't have to be pretty. Doesn't have to be pretty. Get the job done.
I'm scratching my head because I'm wondering. I'm just wondering. Is it possible when the coach's mistake came out, the wrong things that he said, that all of a sudden the team were not who the media were concentrating on? They were concentrating on the coach, and the team was able to calm down and just chill and figure out how to play the game. The pressure was off them because the head coach was getting it all. And that seemed to be the change in when the season changed for the Buffalo Bills. I don't know. Do you think that's a coincidence?
I think it was a wake up call that the team needed. I wouldn't say that was exactly it, but I do think it did play a factor for sure.
Yeah. So okay. So the Bills looked great yesterday, and the ability to play that way. A lot, we saw it in the Canadian Football League, these teams behind me here, that if you get on a roll at the end of the season going into the playoffs, the odds of you going all the way are a lot higher. And that's what we're seeing in this playoff. We're seeing the teams that went into the playoffs limping, like Philly, boom, 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 hit wall, out. Buffalo on a roll, in, and they're good. San Francisco, the same thing. Even Baltimore, they played really well at the end of the season. They've got some momentum.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, right? You got to create your own momentum at times, and Buffalo. I think what was the wake up call is the fact that they almost didn't make the playoffs. They're fighting for their playoff lives, and to me, I think that might have been the kick that this team needed. Not necessarily the ones that you would have liked to have seen. Unfortunately, like if you're a Bills fan, that might have been a little stressful in that final stretch, but it might end up being the thing that helps them, just because they needed that urgency back. They weren't the last few years, again, similar to the Cowboys. The Bills, I felt like, were in a little bit of cruise control, a little too high on themselves, and then they were reminded that they're going up against highly talented quarterbacks in Burrow and Mahomes, right? If they manage to get past Mahomes this weekend, you might have to go up against Lamar Jackson. If the Texans pull off the upset, it's CJ Stroud. Like, it's a murderer's row of quarterbacks in the AFC. Give them credit. They beat the Steelers, but they beat Mason Rudolph. That's a little different than going up against Patrick Mahomes. Yes, Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs have not looked good this year, but look at how they played against Miami, right? They forged a different identity. So
they've been there, done that.
Yeah, it's a team.
Right? They know how it's done.
Denounce the reigning Super Bowl champions at your own peril. That's always what I say. Until they lose, you can't count out the champions.
And how do you bet against Mahomes?
It's so tough.
It's too hard to do. But Josh Allen and Mahomes and I'm sorry, I forgot his name. Baltimore.
Lamar Jackson.
No, not Lamar Jackson. I'm sorry. Used to be Baltimore.
Joe Flacco.
The Colt. Yeah. Oh no, he's there now. Never mind. My point is, they were two of the top quarterbacks in the league a couple of years ago. We're starting to see a proliferation of great quarterbacks now in these past couple of years. You throw in Goff as well. In the national NFC conference, and you come up with another good quarterback that is going to make the NFC even more of a murderer's row. So when it comes to the Chiefs and the Dolphins were a team that they limped into the playoffs. They didn't do well going into the playoffs, and they're out. I, I don't think the Chiefs were a real big competition. I know T's a great quarterback and all that stuff, but I don't think the Dolphins were that tough an opposition for the Chiefs going up against Buffalo. And I'm a Chiefs guy. I've been a Chiefs guy since 2 years before Mahomes arrived there. Yeah, when the coach arrived, that's right. That's when I liked the Chiefs, and I have some memories of the Chiefs. They're a team that's definitely going to be to worry about. But I like the fact that Buffalo. There's a bit of a destiny going on with Buffalo. Last year they lost because their concentration was broken by the devastating injury, and it seemed to me in that game from the point of the injury and into the playoffs, the Bills did not look the same. They just did not look the same. The question is, what Buffalo Bills team are we going to see? Are we going to see the one that we've seen in this playoff? Because if we do, it's going to be a rip roaring game, David. We're going to see two runs by two quarterbacks, probably for touchdowns from a good distance, and the offense is going to come from anywhere with two really tough defenses, and you get that singer in the stands too.
I think the big one here for Buffalo is you got to get pressure on Mahomes. You need Mahomes to not have time to make a move, right? To make that big play. And I think that to me is something that they hadn't done in the past. They've allowed Patrick Mahomes to feel confident that he can make the big plays. You got to take the big play away from him, right?
Absolutely.
Put pressure on him, make him make the mistake.
Absolutely. Well, we've got about a little over 10 minutes, and maybe there's. Do you think that Willette will sign with the Argos?
Do I think? I think so. I think AJ Willette is going to leverage himself to get a big deal, but I think the Argos recognize his value. And look, yes, should you be overpaying for a player that because he's a fan favorite? I don't think so. But we're not talking about a guy who's just good off the field. We're talking about a guy who, in my opinion, when he is at his best, is one of the toughest running backs to play against in the CFL. Brady Oliveira remains the best running back in the CFL. I think there's no doubting that. But I think AJ Willette's the second best. And it's close. It's not like Oliveira is far and away better. I think Ouellette's close. I just think the only thing that will prevent AJ Ouellette from staying with the Argos is if a team comes with an offer that the Argos they're just like, we can't do it. We just simply can't do it. Sorry, AJ. Go and get your pay. Go get paid. We're not. I think AJ Ouellette has put himself through so much to continue his football journey. He deserves to be paid, but there's a limit. They want to make sure that they don't lose too much from their defense. They want to keep that defense going. They've made some moves to address that, trading Curly Giddens to the Elks. I thought that was a very interesting move and maybe one that, sure, it stings, but it solves a need for the Argos where they don't have to go out now and get a defensive lineman. Jake Ceresna is one of the, I think that's how you say his name.
All-star. Yep.
He was an all-star. He was top 4 in pass rushing win rate, according to Pro Football Focus. So that they got an all-star back for a receiver. We know in the CFL, yes, when you have a good receiver, you keep them. You can find receivers. Hard to find running backs.
They can find them on the roster, David.
Yes, that's true. The Argos have had they've got some Canadians that can step in for Curly.
They got quite a few. They've got quite
Tommy Neal. I think they could bring back DeJean Brissett. I think there's guys there that they've already got. I think what thing about the running back position, it's really hard to find a productive CFL running back.
But David, how much of the calculation for I love Willette. Statistically, the way he runs and the punishing running back that he is. Would you say that he had a good game in the Eastern Final? And how do you judge him outside, and not look at what happened in that playoff game? The run game disappeared for the Argos in
Well,
that
the
game.
unfortunate thing too is though he had a concussion in that game.
Yeah.
Wasn't made known, but he was banged up. We do know that he did have a concussion, or was at least led to believe that he had a concussion. But yeah, no, I mean
I know he
that's
was
fair.
hurt in that game. I know he was hurt in that game. Absolutely. He
He
was
was.
running into a really tough defensive line. He got punished. We weren't, as a viewer, and a reporter, it doesn't matter which. I have not seen Willette run into a wall very often, and he did it in that game repeatedly.
No, and that's fair. I think he didn't. It wasn't a very age Ouellette type of game. But what I've seen from Ouellette this year leads me to believe that this is a player that can be a game breaker and continue to be a game breaker. I know some people are worried about paying a running back. He's 28 years old. He's, if not the most dedicated to his fitness, right? I would never ever think he's going to take a step back because of his physical ability, because I think he's got it. Yeah, you have to balance out how much can you really afford to pay for that position,
Let
right?
me let me try it a different way. Talking about the defensive lineman and Curly Gittens. Trading Gittens away, they gave up when you look at him alone, they gave up a lot. But what they gained on the defensive line and how much they can recover for the loss of Curly Gittens just within their roster, I think it was a good trade. I wanted to put my opinion there as far as the trade's concerned. I think for that reason, it's a good trade. And more importantly, you can't compare the two players and say who got the best player because they play different positions and have a different value. And it's rated differently by the person who's rating it, because there's people who like offense, there's people who like defense. If you're a defensive fan, you like that trade for the Argos. If you're an offensive fan, you're scratching your head.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's true. And I think what, like this front office has done a really good job in not putting them backing themselves into a corner. Now, obviously, everyone's talking about, now you're paying Chad Kelly. You got to pay your quarterback, right? Like we're not like, you're not going to be able to get away with not having a capable quarterback in this league.
And they might have traded for another quarterback like him, because they've got a player that's on the protected list by by Edmonton, and we all know most of the quarterbacks in protected lists. Sorry, most of the players in protected lists are quarterbacks. I'm wondering if the Argos have pulled another quarterback out of their hat by getting him from Edmonton.
I think the big one here for the Argos is, you know, they've made it a point saying that, I mean, Pinball did say he would like to have AJ Ouellette back, but I do think that you just have to be careful. Obviously, not going too far into making that how much where you're putting your money towards, because there are areas that need to be addressed. So, I think if you ask me today, I think AJ Ouellette's back, but I'm not going to go out on a limb and say, it's a done deal. It's going to happen, because I think he's going to look and say, I've got an opportunity to go and potentially make life changing money.
Well, the CFL has a luxury not many leagues have. They're in a great position where they can literally start over at a position and only give up about, even if their player, like, to get another guy to replace Ouellette. I know how great you think he is, and I know how great I think he is. Is he unique? Unique in the sense that there aren't many like him that are that bruising, right? But I have to wonder on how hard it will be to replace him and look at the money compared to the money that they'd pay somebody else, and how much are they losing by bringing that somebody else in. And then there's the old story about buying low and selling high. This could be a situation where the Argos sell high. They if he wants too much money, I think there's a limit to what he can ask. Is what I'm saying.
I think so too. Like I'm not. And look, sometimes you got to make those tough choices. I think the big one for AJ is, you know, you got to decide what's your priority, right? I think he wants to get paid. I think he deserves it, but at the same time, he's got to be a little realistic on what he can expect a contending team to pay for him as well. And look, the Argos do have a running back that I think he's a hidden secret, and that's Daniel Adebaboye, the
Yeah,
Canadian. He's shown that he can be a good
they could
back,
have used him in that game they lost.
right? He was injured too, and that's something you got to consider as well. But I wouldn't think that I. What I will say is, you know, the Argos people are worried, and I can understand it. But I think, you know, there's players who like playing here and like being in Toronto, and I think that's something that you can't discount when you look at
No,
what
absolutely.
what.
But they have the luxury of using that totally. In other words, if you really like playing in Toronto, then we expect a home team discount. I mean, that's an expectation with, that's the difference. At least it appears to be the difference between the Canadian Football League and other pro leagues. The home team discount, even in the NFL, they can replace guys pretty easily. Look how quickly all the running backs basically went who wanted more money. They didn't get the money, and teams went. They went on without them. They just said instead of having a star running back, let's go with two, because that's been the newest thing that they've done. Now the Argos have done the same thing, and they need that. So the question is, yeah, I'll let you say the last word on. I hope they sign him. For a guy who watches that player every week, I enjoy watching him. The reality is what the reality is, but I'm not going to sit here and decide what reality is. I'll just tell you that there's a limit to what he gets paid, and I would love to see him still play. It was always fun watching.
Yeah, no, and I think he means a lot to the community too. A lot of people like him. He's a fan favorite player. If you're, a fan looking to get an Argos jersey, a lot of them are getting 34 AJ Ouellettes. That
Yep.
he was probably one of the more popular ones.
And that could lead to a bit of disappointment by those fans. I've seen that happen before, where the fans follow a player very quickly. I'm thinking of James Wilder, another running back that was much the same kind of running back. Bigger in height wise, not like a fire hydrant, like Willette, but taller, but just as hard hitting running back. But I wonder also how much toll that takes on the player. We understand it took toll in that game. I wish him good health. And the Canadian Football League next year is going to be very interesting. That trade to Edmonton. Edmonton, McLeod Bethel Thompson is a regular season beast. When it comes to passing, and he's got a guy now that understands how he plays. And we saw over the years, every time a quarterback comes, there are players that play and practice with them for a very long time, and then they show up together on the big team, and we see great things. So I think there's going to be great things in Edmonton.
I'm very curious to see how that dynamic works with Trey Ford, how patient Trey Ford will be, with McLeod there, and it was an interesting move. I do think it's great that McLeod's back. We need more good quarterbacks in the CFL. I'm curious to see how the West shakes up. Could be an opening this year for a team that if a team really wants it.
Well, I think Saskatchewan's going to be improved. I think Edmonton's going to be improved, and Winnipeg's going to be Winnipeg, right? And BC's becoming BC. I think you can say that, right? So that's 4 teams right there. So, and then we haven't talked about Calgary yet, right? So it's going to be an interesting season there, and in the East it'll be a different reason because there'll be a new king of the hill. The Argos are going to have a quarterback that had an injury going out in the Grey Cup. The questions are going to rise, his total health. So it's going to be an interesting season, and I think for opposite reasons. I think there's room for some new blood at the top in the Eastern Division. The Argos have to overcome that coaching change. David, I hate to say this, but from what I saw, the offense is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. Love the quarterback. Watch him. Think he's a great quarterback. But that team has won a lot of games because of their defense. And, they're going to miss that. We'll see if they have the players or the new management team that takes care of that issue.
As John Murphy, I know that we're tight on time. John Murphy did say, while it's tough to see Corey Mason, Josh Bell leave, don't discount who they're going to bring in.
No.
And it sounds like they might be bringing in someone that to help keep that defense chucking along.
Yeah, and you know what? Corey Mason's a great guy. I know we both like him and wish him all the best in Saskatchewan. But one thing I have to agree with you is anybody can be replaced anywhere, and that's the thing about sports. There is no forever job. Eventually, Father Time takes you out, or you've been coaching for too long, so that takes you out. So, or it gets stale.
Right.
Your last word, buddy.
Well, I'm very curious to see how the next few. I mean, I love this time of year. Obviously, I love it when both football leagues are playing, but very curious to see how everything shakes up going forward, especially in the NFL playoffs.
Football is football, David. As far as
football is football.
Football is football. It's a lot of fun to watch, and there's things we can learn watching the NFL that help us with what we're doing and watching. I guess I go to the Dinwiddie School of NFL viewing, where you want to keep thinking football and keep watching it and enjoying it. And the NFL right now, the wild card's over, was an amazing weekend. I'm looking forward to another great weekend of football.
Yeah, give me a great week.
Okay, he's David Morassutti. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, airing live Mondays at 9 p.m. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer here on SpanglishWorld.ca and Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Don't forget Candid Frank Stanisci on YouTube. Thanks for watching, everybody.